senior year at Amy Bill is unlike any other school. Seniors take high school and college classes, have jobs, and are expected to fulfill 100 hours of volunteer work at our senior project. Since the beginning of our Amy Bill experience, we've been told about the senior projects that everyone is expected to complete. And during our junior year, we find where we would like to volunteer, go on interviews, and find mentors to guide and teach us when we begin our projects as seniors. I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do for my senior project until I met with the volunteer coordinator at the Museum of Natural History and Science. From the minute you walk into the museum, there is a ticket booth for the IMAX movies about penguins or megalodons. Usually there are groups of kids on field trips, tourists, and people on their day off roaming the museum. The museum has a complete T-Rex, pterodactyls flying overhead, the space station, and the animal center. The sign saying, "Don't touch," daring its guests to touch the realistic bone molds. The atmosphere of the museum makes the subject of science exciting and interesting, but what happens behind the scenes? Across the street is a plain building locked and only accessed by a key card. Inside is where the magic of the museum happens, where the actual fossils are brought, molded, and kept safe. I'm Jessie Abeta, Amy Bill Senior, and this is my senior project. When I first looked into working with the museum, I thought I would be in the actual museum. I thought I'd be helping with science classes, tours, working in the living museum with the animals, or showing movies in the IMAX. Instead, I was introduced to a paleontologist and set up to work across the street in fossil collections. The Fossil Collection Building is a strict access building where all the behind-the-scene work is done for the museum. There's a lab where fossils are brought to be researched, scanned, cleaned, and molded. In the back of the building is where all the fossils are collected and stored in large storage cabinets and on massive shelves. During the first part of my volunteer project, there are new prehistoric plants, fish, and organisms being sent to the museum. When the fossils are dug out of the ground, they are wrapped in newspaper for protection, labeled and packed in boxes, and taken back to the museum. My first job was to unwrap each fossil, label them, box them, and eventually create a new storage cabinet for the new fossils. This job was a long process. It took my full attention to make sure every original label was saved, new labels created, and none of the fossils were destroyed in the process. After labeling and putting each fossil in a display box, I had to put them away in storage, shelf by shelf. This part of my volunteer work was hard. I ended up hurting my back and pulling a few muscles while lifting a heavy shelf of fossils. I had to take off time from my volunteer work because of my injuries. I had to realize I had limits and learn to ask for help. My second task was to put away fossils that had been on display, had been researched, and had molds made of them. My last task was to organize fossil collections. I helped put new shelves in the storage cabinets and finished my volunteer hours reorganizing all of the storage cabinets. My last task allowed me to see almost every single fossil in our museum, from teeth to small skeletal systems to early human footprints and the skulls of the earliest primates. When I started taking college classes, I wouldn't have anywhere to go since I live an hour away, so I'd go to the museum and work for several hours before heading off to my college class. I may not be going into paleontology or archaeology, but I definitely found a passion working with the fossils and behind the scenes. I enjoyed working in the museum because it was so different from any other environment I'm usually in. My work in the museum will not go unnoticed. The fossil collections is reviewed and needs to meet certain standards to continue the funding for the museum and the research on the fossils found here in New Mexico. I've learned that no amount of work goes unnoticed. Even though I was working in an empty warehouse mostly by myself, I learned to put in an effort no matter if someone was watching me or not. What mattered was how much work I could accomplish in a matter of hours, how many fossils I could get into storage, or how many cabinets I could organize, or how many shelves I could install into the new cabinets. The volunteer project helped me reflect on my work ethic. I work with fossils that are very important to research, and they answer questions that science still has. I'm honored because during my time there, I was able to study and was entrusted with fossils closed to the public. My work will be helpful to those doing research later. The fossils will be safely organized and the museum will be able to meet the review standards. The hours I dedicated to volunteering were not wasted. I will always be thankful to have experienced a field that would have been otherwise closed off to me. It was an honor to work for the Museum of Natural History and Science.
And I can't blame all on the sun. Oh no, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Electric Avenue. And then we'll take it higher.